Greetings, brave adventurers! It's FoxyBard here, and we're back with another Glory Story Monday. I have for you today a pair of wonderful stories, both heartwarming and epic. As always, these stories are taken from the r/RPG Glory Stories subreddit, and you can find the links to both in the video description below, so stop by and give them some karma. They deserve it. But without further ado, have a seat around the fire and we'll dig into some stories of role-playing. Our first story, titled The Time I Hugged the BBEG, is by the user Nemanev. Nemanev. Reddit usernames be easy to pronounce one time, please. And I love this story because it shows that you don't always have to resort to violence to solve the problems of your campaign, and also a really good technique for making your world more interesting as a DM. Tale start. The best campaign I've ever played in was with my friends Newt and Green. A girl, let's call her Buck, because all I remember about her was her buck teeth and big forefront. And calling her breasts would be disrespectful. Yeah, it would. What the hell? The DM was the hero here. I never played with her before or since, but she made her NPCs make a lot of sense with their inner conflicts and stuff like that. Basically, she played all meaningful NPCs like sentient beings and not plot devices, which meant that they all had real motives and most could be reasoned with. This helped RPing a lot, because more often than not, we'd find sensible solutions to our problems, and somehow she made sure we'd have a fair share of combat regardless. She was a beast of a DM. Sounds like my kind of girl. Good job. I don't want to go into too much detail because I don't remember much of it. It was like 20 years ago. Oh, but you remember. But the story was about finding a powerful MacGuffin before the big bad evil guy did. We went through political intrigue, war, dungeons, drama of all sorts. It was really fun. The big bad evil guy's identity was obscure to us until the very end, and the not-so-shocking reveal was that it was one of our benefactors and quest givers. How unexpected! And by that, I mean totally expected. It went like this. After we retrieved the MacGuffin, Big Bad Evil Guy's right hand ambushed us and stole it, of course. We gave chase, but we lost him. However, we captured one of his men, and after questioning him, we had a trail to follow. We quickly discover the Big Bad Evil Guy's identity, and we went to confront him at his tower, where the final showdown took place. It was amazing. The tower we were familiar with became a living maze with traps and all sorts of nasty. We barely made it to the top, where pieces of the blown-off roof were floating about, and the big bad evil guy was casting the ritual that would end everything. His endgame was actually to blow up the entire planet with him in it. No dimensional travel, no escape plan, just a big-ass terrorist attack. Weirdly enough, a few months before 9/11. Though, that's not much of a big deal to us because we're from a different country. We fought the nasties that were protecting the big bad evil guy as he concentrated on the ritual. When we were done, we asked him to stop. Then, he began his monologue about how, after seeing his hometown be ravaged by war and misery over and over, he realized that He realized that mankind was doomed, so he found his way out to end the cycle of suffering. He sounds like a Final Fantasy villain. My character was the face and healer of the party, a lawful good cleric dwarf that was above all things old and wise. The big bad evil guy's speech was so perfectly crafted that I saw through it without being cheesy. He was ridden with guilt for being unable to protect his people despite his power. To me, it was obvious. So before Green, fighter, could launch his attack to stop the madness and begin the real final battle, I stepped forward and put my mace away. I told him it wasn't his fault. He did everything he could, But he can't always be there, be right, and be strong. I told him that we could only do our best and inspire others to do their best. But sometimes the evil in the world does its job better than us. It wasn't fair for anyone to fault him for trying his best and failing. And I assured him that, if his people were in trouble ever again, this time he'd have us at his side to help, so we could share the pride of helping and the shame of failing. Y'all, this dwarf is so wholesome. Buck's ranger said that she'll go live among his people and be always ready to help. Green's fighter sheathed his blade and said that he'd train them to fight. Newt's wizard said he'd join his resources and skills with his to cast a wider protection on his people. DM thought for a while. She told me to roll diplomacy, and I did well. The big bad evil guy broke down in tears and said it was too late to go back, that this was the best that he could do. I said that there was always time and stepped forward. The DM made his roll again. Pass. The big bad evil guy began doubting himself and was now angry and ashamed, but wasn't letting go. I said that nobody would fault him for this and stepped forward again. Roll. Fail. The big bad evil guy said no and pointed his wand of lightning bolts at me, and the DM allowed me to make a reflex save to have an action before he casted. I aced the save, and the DM told me I could close in, slam his face with my mace before he casted, and force him a concentration save. I thought about it for a second and told her that I was closing him, but to hug him. She told me that if I tried to grapple him, he'd be able to launch the spell first. I said, no grapple, just a hug. Wait, dwarf voice. No grapple, just a hug. Oh god, that's awful. She took a few minutes, I think, to choose between game mechanics and great RP. She allowed the hug and made a roll behind the screen. She smiled and told us that the big bad evil guy hugged back. I'm gonna call him Jeff, he's not evil anymore. Newt quickly stepped forward to dispel the ritual, and the rest joined the hug. Aww. We swore to be better in the future and to rely on one another. We all kept our promises, and helped Jeff rebuild a place for his people to live in, and the campaign ended in a really positive tone. I asked the DM what her final roll was, and she confirmed that it was a will save for Jeff. So, he rolled low? I asked. No, he rolled high. His will to be better won. Best DM ever. Wow, I find it hard to disagree with that. Tail and, if you couldn't tell from my tonal shift throughout, I was really into this story. I think it's so sweet, and you know what, I'll even forgive the OP for not remembering any good details about the other player. It's fine, I guess. What this DM did is something absolutely spectacular. I long to do something like this in my campaigns. I try to at least always offer an option for talking your way out of something. Well, okay, not my current campaign, it's complicated. We'll tell that story later. But I am absolutely a sucker for redemption arcs and befriending people, and this hit all of the things I really like in an RPG story. This might be my favorite story I've read on the channel. Without a doubt. Thank you so much, Nemenev, for sharing this. I loved this. I loved every second of this. NPCs are people too. That is a good lesson. Let's go with that as a takeaway. On to the next story. Our next story is by the user Space Marines. Got it, cool. And it is an epic conclusion for an epic campaign. There will be a lot less, of me going, aww, in this one, because it's less cute and more just really cool, and I think it'll be a lot of fun. Tale start. Disclaimer, this post is really long. I've seen longer, I've read longer. Okay, so this is quite possibly the D&D story I am gonna remember the most fondly in my days to come. Before anything though, the characters. Obviously, using the characters' names and not the players. Denzal, a homebrew half-elf, half-tiefling storm sorcerer, formerly fiend warlock with her dad as her patron, also my character. O'Brien, a human gunslinger who was a detective and former gangster. He also made a deal with the Raven Queen, which comes up later. Sedova, high elf divination wizard, who was actually a drow in disguise, unbeknownst to her until the final act. Also, she had 7 dads who adopted her. Aww. Don't question the player, he's always a little random. Al Cabone, I get it. A human necromancer who specialized in bringing up an undead mafia. Oh my god, that's great. Krog, a Skaven spores druid who used to rule a kingdom, but his dad was killed by a demon frog, as you do, and he was usurped. Echo, a skeleton gunslinger NPC that we pretty much refused to let leave. Okay, now we can get to the story. The final session was yesterday, as I am writing this out at 12:47 in the morning. You guys, it's technically yesterday. Beforehand, we had accidentally released a goddess of prophecy, who always predicted the future correctly. Her name was Ira, and she was hell-bent on annihilating the universe and consuming greater deities. She actually is the one who killed Denzal's dad, which is why she had to become a storm sorcerer. Fast forward a bit, and we have an alliance between the forces of the 9 Hells, currently being solely managed by Zariel, the Shadowfell, the Drow, the Skaven Empire ruled by the Demon Frog, who may or may not have been called Kermit. Amazing. A slightly altered Imperium of Man, and a circle of druids all committed to defeating Ira. We get a massive spire from the astral plane that we were going to use as an oversized bullet. I guess it's effective. We prepare for that when Krog gets a notice that a reoccurring villain named Grendel, basically Mr. X, had several Skaven hostage and killed several on camera. He fixes that situation and learns that Grendel was being controlled the whole time through torture. Oh, poor guy. He also tells Krog that only by enlisting the help of Cthulhu could the whole world be saved from Ira. When did Cthulhu get involved? Okay. He enlists Cthulhu while the rest of the party departs to find a man named Wilson to power the spire/massive bullet. While in space with Cthulhu, that's just normal now, Krog encounters Kermit. The two have a standoff, with Kermit's Luger and Krog's water gun. Krog wins the duel, and the water gun was powerful enough to send Kermit flying to Neptune. I gotta get me one of those. Meanwhile, we fail at that and get betrayed by the Drow and enslaved Skaven. Krog returns and we split up. Denzal, Krog, Echo, and O'Brien go to Mount Celestia to find Echo's former wife to power the spire instead of Wilson, while Sedova, Grendel, Al Cabone, and Sedova's biological father stay behind to deal with the traitorous Drow Queen, who is coincidentally Sedova's aunt. The Mount Celestia people find Echo's wife by being incredibly stealthy, and the others manage to take out the Queen with the loss of Sedova's actual dad. We launch the Spire and Starfighters into space for one final gambit. Ira's thing was eating gods to become powerful enough to fight Cthulhu. The plan was to lure her to the moon with the remaining gods as well as the Emperor of the Modified Imperium, as he was practically a god, and launch the Spire at her. We launch it along with 10 starfighters, 6 of which were piloted by us, the player characters, and Echo. However, Krog and O'Brien had to stay behind to deal with an unaccounted for Tarrasque from a one-shot Ooh, there's a Tarrasque now! Ugh, from a one-shot we did a while back. The rest of us fly into space to find a bunch of white dragons led by Levistus, who in this setting was represented by an undead white dragon, and was dethroned by Denzal's father shortly before he claimed the throne of all 9 Hells. That's the short version. I kinda want to hear the long version. We take out the dragon minions and with a clutch crit, Levistus. Coincidentally, the Tarask party also had a clutch crit. We step onto the spire after getting a distress call that it's off course. In the spire, we find the future version of Sedova. She came back in time after becoming a cleric of Ira, and she was bent on killing us in order to bring Ira's dream to fruition. She killed Sedova's, meaning her own, 7 gay adoptive dads, no, the polycule, and mailed their rings to present Sedova just for the hell of it. Present Sedova gets the final blow with Disintegrate, but one more issue arises. From the ashes of future Sedova rises an avatar of Ira. I'd like to point out at this point we were 17th level and had some interesting abilities. Krog was a fan of Polymorph, and the DM allowed him to turn into an adult red dragon. Hey, that sounds like Form of the Dragon from Pathfinder. DM had also given Denzal the ability to turn into a pit fiend, due to her pulling something from the deck of many things, and her dad being essentially the second Asmodeus. The battle was intense. We were running out of time to beat her before we all died in the spire. O'Brien was teleported by Sedova to a control panel, allowing him to open an access hatch for the other starfighters to fire railguns of power that I'm guessing are equivalent to multiple Spartan lasers from Halo. However, Ira did not like that. It took her some time, but she managed to kill O'Brien. The rest of us eventually finished her off, but she greatly harmed the control panel, setting the spire off course. We thought one of us would have to stay, and Krog even volunteered, but then Al Cabone realized he had Animate Object. So Denzal went out of the spire, still as a pit fiend, to rescue any fighter pilots who were out there, and still alive, while Al animated the controls. Sedova teleported us all out, and we end up back where the campaign started, on a railroad. A literal railroad. This DM was not a railroader. We resurrected O'Brien with the wish spell. Now, for everyone's endings. Denzal takes up the mantle of responsibility for ruling over the 9 hells after her father. O'Brien adopts and raises his niece in the Shadowfell, with top-notch education provided by the Raven Queen. Sedova kills a man that one of her dads was hunting down and wanders for the rest of her life. Al Cabone joins a court of liches, finally achieving his dream of becoming one. Krog reclaims the Skaven Empire and starts having it become a world superpower. After 1 year, Echo invites us to a bar one final time, to tell us that he has to go and find his wife. One final day with everyone together. One day more, another day, another destiny. Sorry, got a little Les Mis there. I should point out that this is the first campaign where my group ended naturally. Our first one ended in a TPK. The next was abandoned for Waterdeep Dragon Heist. Waterdeep ended when one player got a bad idea for a character and made everyone uncomfortable. He's not a bad player, he just had a bad moment. We all do. Which partially caused DM burnout. Then another campaign ended for reasons I joke about to this day, and the others are still going. This one was a monument to us as a group, and I couldn't ask for better friends to have this with. So shout out to the absolute mad lads I call my friends. You guys are the best. Tail End. This is another story where I kind of ask how it reached this point, but you know what? It sounded like a great time. A mad god eating other gods, Cthulhu gets involved, giant space lasers and interstellar travel like it's Ultima 1 and 2. The absolute best pun for a character I've ever heard. Al Cabone, I love you. Al Cabone, you are an icon. I love you. And I'm pretty sure Skaven are a Warhammer race, not a D&D race. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sure there's some equivalent. Maybe they're called Skaven too. I didn't look it up. I probably could. Hang on. Oh, yep, yeah they are. Cool, I guess they're both called Skaven. Works for me. Anyway, I also hope that Kermit the Frog has a great time on Neptune. Saying that out loud, it sounds ridiculous, and you know what? Yeah, it is, but it was great. It was a lot of fun. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. About either story, really. And don't forget, if you liked this video, you can like that video. It really does help me out. What helps me more is subscribing to the channel. I would super appreciate it. I love every one of my subscribers, and, you know, I'd love you too if you join them. Speaking of joining, there's also a FoxyBard Discord server, and you can join that. It's also down in the description below. And for those of you that are subscribed, don't forget, you can ring the bell notification icon, and that will notify you when I upload a new video. I love Glory Story Mondays. They always make me so happy. Anyway, this has been FoxyBard telling you about, well, RPG Glory Stories, and I'll see you on Wednesday for Community Day. For now though, let's douse the fire and get back to our own adventures.